The cashier's cry shattered the usual supermarket hum like glass crashing to the floor. It wasn't a discreet warning. It was a public condemnation, delivered with that sharp tone of someone who relishes a small power over another's misfortune. Mina, felt her blood run cold. Her hands, small and chapped from the cold of the streets, trembled visibly on the metal counter. She clutched the tin of baby formula as if it were the only lifeline in a stormy ocean. It wasn't for her. Her stomach rumbled. Yes, she had spent 2 days tricking hunger with public tap water, but that milk was not for her. It was for the only person she had left in the world. "Please, ma'am," Mina whispered, her voice cracking, not daring to lift her gaze. Her eyes were fixed on her worn-out slippers, split at the toe, revealing her misery. "Try one more time. Maybe the machine failed. I only need this tin. Just one, ma'am." The cashier, a woman with a sour face, who seemed to have lost her patience a decade ago, snorted loudly, making a theatrical gesture for everyone in the queue to notice her annoyance. "Girl, I've swiped this tattered card 3 times. There's no money. Zero. Nothing. Do you understand? Or should I explain with pictures?" The woman slapped the card against the counter. "You're holding up the queue. There are important people waiting, people who can actually pay." Behind Mina, the world seemed to have stopped. The air grew heavy, suffocating. She could feel the stares fixed on her back. They weren't gazes of compassion. They were gazes of judgment. Society doesn't forgive poverty when it interrupts its hurry. Just behind her, the imposing figure of Chief Akin, loomed like a tower of impatience. Akin was not used to waiting. His life was timed by meetings, stock market closures, and multi-billion naira decisions. Standing in a supermarket queue was an anomaly for him, a glitch in his perfect system. He was only doing it because it was his weekend with Kunle, and his ex-wife had demanded he do normal things with the boy. "Unbelievable," Akin muttered, checking his wristwatch, completely ignoring the human drama happening a meter away from him. He only saw an obstacle, a dirty obstacle. "Kunle, don't wander off. Don't touch anything. This place is full of careless people." But Kunle, at 7 years old and in his immaculate school uniform, wasn't looking at his father's watch, nor was he looking at his phone. His eyes, large and observant, were fixed on the girl in front of them. Kunle saw what his father refused to see. He saw that the girl's clothes were 3 sizes too big for her, as if she had shrunk inside them. He saw that her hair was matted, not out of rebellion, but from lack of a mirror and a comb. But above all, he saw how her shoulders subtly shook in a silent cry she tried to suppress with all her might. "Papa," Kunle said, gently tugging at the sleeve of Akin's perfect suit jacket. "Not now, Kunle. I'm trying to see how much longer this spectacle will last," Akin replied, his gaze fixed on the back of the girl's neck, with a mix of disgust and boredom. "Hey, you at the counter," Akin raised his voice. His authoritative tone resonated above the hum of the refrigerators. "What's the problem? If the girl doesn't have money, send her away. I'm in a hurry. My time costs more than everything in this aisle." Akin's comment was like a slap. Mina recoiled even further. She wanted to disappear. She wanted to melt into the floor and cease to exist. The humiliation burned more than the hunger. The cashier, feeling backed by the man in the suit, smiled maliciously. "You heard the chief. Girl, get out." The cashier stretched out her hand and snatched the tin of milk from Mina's fingers. It was a harsh, violent movement. "No!" The scream escaped Mina's throat instinctively. She tried to hold onto the tin, her fingers white from the force she exerted. "Please, it's medicine. It's for. I need it. I promise to bring the money later. Let go." The cashier barked, pulling hard. The tin slipped from Mina's hands, the metallic sound of it hitting the counter and then being disdainfully thrown into a returns box under the table resonated like a gunshot. Mina was left with empty hands, suspended in the air, as if still holding the hope that had just been snatched from her. It was at that instant, in that second of absolute silence where only the girl's agitated breathing could be heard, that Kunle did something that broke the pattern. The boy let go of his father's hand, stepped forward, invading the girl's personal space, and raised his right arm. With a firm finger, he pointed directly at Mina's face. The image froze. Akin looked at his son, expecting the boy, educated in the best private schools, to make some comment about the girl's hygiene or mock her, just as he had implicitly taught him by his example. The cashier awaited the final insult. Mina closed her eyes, preparing for the final blow of mockery, but the silence lengthened, charged with an electric tension that made the skin prickle. The blindness of ego. Akin observed the scene with a raised eyebrow. In his mind, the equation was simple. His son was about to teach that vagrant a lesson about her place in the world. Akin smiled with arrogance. Well done, son. Mark the difference. Let her know we don't belong to the same universe. For Akin, poverty was not a circumstance. It was a choice, or worse, a contagious disease. He had spent the last 20 years building a wall of money around his heart to forget where he came from. Seeing that dirty girl provoked a physical reaction of repulsion, as if the mere sight of her rags could stain his immaculate bespoke suit. "Kunle, that's it," Akin said with a voice that pretended to be pedagogical but sounded cruel. "Tell her to move. Tell her successful people don't have all day to watch her cry over spilled milk." But Kunle didn't lower his finger, and his face showed no mockery. It showed a painful confusion, the kind only children feel when they realize the adult world is broken. "Papa," Kunle said again, still pointing at Mina, but this time turning his head towards his father, his eyes filled with tears. Why is she trembling? The question disarmed Akin's air of superiority for a second, but his armor was too thick. "Because she's cold or hungry or scared. What do I know, Kunle?" "It's not our problem," Akin responded, snapping his fingers. "Stop pointing. It's rude. Come back here. Let's go to another checkout. I'm not breathing this air for another second." Akin tried to grab Kunle by the shoulder to drag him away, but the boy planted his feet firmly on the ground with unusual strength for his age. "No," Kunle shouted, wriggling free from his father's hand. The child's cry made several customers in adjacent queues turn around. Akin felt the heat rise to his neck. He hated scandals. He hated losing control. "Kunle, don't make me," Akin threatened, lowering his voice with clenched teeth. "She's not buying sweets, Papa," Kunle interrupted, his voice gaining strength, vibrating with pure indignation. "You told me poor people spend their money on vices. You told me they are lazy. But she only wants milk." Mina opened her eyes, looked at the rich boy, the boy who smelled of expensive perfume and soap, and saw something she hadn't seen in months. Humanity. "Look at her shoes, Papa," Kunle insisted, now pointing towards Mina's feet. "They have holes, and she's returning the milk. She's not stealing, she's returning it." The cashier, feeling she was losing control of her own counter, intervened with a shrill voice. "Hey sir, control your son. This brat is a first-class scammer. They always come with long faces begging for mercy. Give them an inch, and they'll take a mile. Take your child away before she gives him lice." Those words acted as a trigger for Akin, not out of compassion for the girl, but as a confirmation of his own prejudices. The cashier was right. It was an emotional trap. These people always manipulate. Akin took a long stride and stepped between Kunle and Mina, using his body as a shield. He looked down at the girl from his height with a coldness that could freeze hell. "Listen to me closely," Akin said directly to Mina without shouting, but with a tone as sharp as a scalpel. "I don't know what game you're playing to impress my son, but it doesn't work with me. Take your things, if you have any, and leave. You're bothering us. You're dirtying the view." Mina lifted her chin. Despite the grime on her face, despite the hunger devouring her insides, there was an ancient dignity in her dark eyes. A dignity Akin had forgotten existed. "I'm not playing, sir," she said with a voice so soft that Akin had to lean slightly to hear her. "And I don't want your money. I just wanted my Mama Adura not to die today." The phrase hung in the air. "Your Mama Adura?" Akin let out a dry, incredulous laugh. "Please, the sick grandmother story. What next? Do you have a lame dog? A blind brother? Spare me the soap opera script." Akin turned to the cashier, pulling out his black leather wallet. He extracted a platinum card that gleamed under the fluorescent lights. "Charge my things, and quickly, and for goodness sake, call security to remove the rubbish from the aisle." The word rubbish hit Mina harder than any fist. A solitary tear rolled down her dirty cheek, leaving a clean track on her skin. She nodded slowly, accepting defeat, accepting that in this world, being right didn't matter if you didn't have a balance in the bank. Mina turned to leave. The boy reached into his pocket of his beige trousers. He searched desperately. His fingers closed around something metallic and cold. It wasn't much. It wasn't an unlimited credit card. It was something much more valuable to him. "Wait!" Kunle shouted. Mina stopped, but didn't turn around. She didn't want to be seen crying anymore. Kunle ran to the counter, dodging his father's hand, which tried to stop him again. He arrived in front of the cashier and with a dry thud placed an object on the conveyor belt. It wasn't just any coin. It was an ancient silver coin, large and heavy, a collector's coin that Kunle's grandfather, Akin's father, had given him before he died, telling him, "This is your lucky coin, champion. Use it only when it really matters. Use it to save something you love." "Is this enough?" Kunle asked, looking the cashier in the eyes, defiantly. "It's real silver. My grandpa said it's worth a lot. Charge the milk, charge everything she wants." Akin was petrified. He recognized the coin instantly. It was the only emotional inheritance his own father had left the boy. Akin had tried to buy it from Kunle 1,000 times to keep it in a safe, but the boy never let go of it. And now he was giving it away for a stranger, for a nobody. "Kunle, what are you doing?" Akin's voice came out strangled, unrecognizable. Fury and disbelief wrestled in his throat. "What you're not doing, Papa," the boy replied without looking at him. "Buying justice." The cashier looked at the coin with greed. Then she looked at Akin, seeking approval to take it. Akin felt the ground shift. His son was humiliating him. His son was breaking the rules of the game. Akin's rage erupted. He couldn't allow that girl to manipulate his son to that extent. He lunged towards the counter to retrieve the coin, pushing Mina, who had timidly approached upon seeing the boy's gesture. "Don't you dare touch that," Akin roared, flailing his arm. His large, heavy hand accidentally hit Mina's arm as he tried to push her away. The blow wasn't strong, but it was enough to destabilize the fragile girl. Mina stumbled and fell to her knees. As she fell, her worn sleeve caught on the edge of the counter and tore. Something fell from her wrist. It wasn't a watch, it wasn't a jewel, it was a bracelet. A simple, hand-woven bracelet of old, faded red thread, with a very specific knot pattern, a pattern that braided 3 threads into one, ending in a small infinity-shaped knot. The bracelet landed right beside Akin's Italian leather shoes. The world stopped. The supermarket noise disappeared. Akin looked down, furious, ready to shout at the girl to get up. But then he saw the bracelet, and his heart stopped beating. His breath caught in his throat. His eyes widened disproportionately, losing all trace of arrogance, replaced by absolute terror. It couldn't be. It was impossible, that bracelet, that weave, that specific knot. In the end, there was only one person in the world who knew how to make that knot. A woman he had left behind 30 years ago. A woman who had promised him that that knot would keep him tied to his destiny no matter how far he ran. Akin fell to his knees, not out of humility, but because his legs simply stopped responding. His trembling hand reached towards the dirty supermarket floor to touch the red thread. "Where did you get this?" Akin whispered, his voice broken, looking at Mina with eyes that no longer saw a vagrant, but a ghost. The red thread of destiny. Time. That concept Akin believed he controlled with his Swiss watches and millimeter-precise agendas, completely disintegrated. On his knees on the dirty supermarket floor, surrounded by curious glances and murmurs of disapproval, the powerful chief Akinwale was nothing more than a frightened child trapped in an adult's body. His fingers brushed the rough weave of the bracelet. It wasn't a simple ornament. It was a map to a past he had buried under layers of cement, success, and oblivion. That knot, that braided 3-strand knot ending in an imperfect infinity, was the signature of only one woman in the world. One thread for you, one for me, and one for God. So he never lets us go. She used to tell him while weaving by candlelight in that corrugated iron shack where the rain sounded like war drums. "It's mine." Mina's voice broke Akin's trance. It was a choked cry, full of panic. The girl, seeing that giant in a suit kneeling before her, interpreted his silence as a greater threat. In her world, when an adult fell silent and stared at you, the blow that followed was usually the hardest. With a quick movement, born of the instinct of survival of one who has had to defend every crumb of bread, Mina lunged to the floor. Her small, dirty hands scratched the floor, snatching the bracelet from Akin's trembling fingers. "Don't take it from me. It's all I have," she wailed, scrambling backward on all fours, her eyes wide with terror. Akin blinked, abruptly returning to reality, but reality was not the same. The bright supermarket, with its white lights and perfectly aligned products, now seemed to him a false stage, an empty shell. "No, wait," Akin stammered, trying to get up, but his legs felt like lead. Who gave you that? Tell me, who made it for you? His tone wasn't soft. He didn't know how to be soft. Desperation made his voice sound like a demanding, authoritative roar. Mina didn't wait to hear more. Fear injected pure adrenaline into her veins. She jumped to her feet, leaving the tin of milk behind, leaving Kunle's silver coin on the belt, leaving behind any hope of food. She only cared about protecting the bracelet. "Leave me alone," she screamed and ran. She darted towards the automatic exit, her broken slippers hitting the waxed floor with a frantic rhythm. "Hey, come back here," the cashier shouted, more concerned about the scandal than the girl. "Security, the rogue girl is escaping." That word rogue finally broke something inside Akin. He stood up, swaying as if drunk with shock. He looked at the cashier. That woman who minutes before had seemed like an ally in efficiency, now seemed like a grotesque monster painted with cheap makeup. "Shut up," Akin growled with an intensity that made the woman recoil and swallow hard. "Don't you dare call her that." Akin looked at Kunle. The boy was pale, mouth open, staring towards where the girl had fled. "Papa, she left," Kunle whispered, his voice broken. "She left without the milk." "Not for long," Akin said. A fierce determination hardened his face. It wasn't the determination to close a business. It was the vital urgency of someone who needs air to breathe. Akin spun on his heels, ignoring the cart full of expensive wines and imported cheeses. He ignored his platinum credit card still in the machine. "Sir, your card, your purchase," the cashier shouted, waving the plastic in the air. "Keep it," Akin roared without turning back, grabbing Kunle's hand tightly. "Charge everything. Charge triple if you want, but don't make me waste another second." Akin dragged his son towards the exit. The automatic doors opened, and the humid street heat hit their faces. The traffic noise, the honking, the city's chaos, everything seemed amplified. "Do you see her?" Akin asked, scanning the crowd desperately. His blue eyes, usually cold and calculating, searched frantically among the people, among the cars, among the gray colors of the sidewalk. "There," Kunle pointed. About 50 meters away, a small figure in oversized clothes turned the corner, running with a slight but swift limp. She was heading towards the area Akin always avoided, the area where the asphalt cracked and the city lights didn't reach. "Let's go," Akin said. And for the first time in years, Akin ran. He didn't run on an air-conditioned gym treadmill. He ran on the hot cement, his leather-soled shoes slipping, feeling the sweat soak his designer shirt in a matter of seconds. He wasn't running after a girl. He was running after a ghost he thought had died 30 years ago. He was running after the terrifying and wonderful possibility that his memory was playing tricks on him, or worse, that it wasn't. Where the asphalt ends. The chase led them far from the main avenue, far from the shining shop windows and fashionable cafes. They crossed an invisible line that divides all great cities, the border between those who have and those who survive. The air changed. It no longer smelled of freshly baked bread and burnt gasoline. Now it smelled of stagnant, damp, accumulated garbage and hopelessness. Akin gasped. His heart hammered against his ribs like a caged bird. Kunle, beside him, ran with admirable endurance, driven by a mission he understood better than his father, to help. "Papa, wait," Kunle shouted, pointing towards a narrow alley between two abandoned buildings. "She went in there. I saw her." Akin stopped for a second, resting his hands on his knees to catch his breath. He looked at the alley. It was a dark hole, a black mouth in the city's facade walls covered with illegible graffiti, puddles of black water on the ground, and mountains of cardboard piled against the walls. Just an hour ago, Akin would have called the police if he had to approach such a place. He would have locked the doors of his armored car. He would have felt disgust. Now he felt a different fear, a reverential fear. "Stay close to me, Kunle," he ordered, loosening the silk tie that felt like a rope around his neck. "Don't let go of my hand." They entered the alley. The sunlight barely touched the ground there. The silence was dense, broken only by the sound of their own footsteps and the distant dripping of a broken pipe. They walked a few meters, dodging broken glass and trash. At the end of the alley, where the path seemed to end in a blind wall, there was a precarious structure. It wasn't a house. It was a shelter made of scraps, rusted, corrugated iron sheets, blue construction plastics, and wooden crates. Akin felt a knot in his stomach. The architecture of misery. He knew it. He had been born in one just like it. He had erased it from his mind. covered it with marble and glass in his mansion, but his body remembered it. It remembered the cold that seeped through the cracks, the sound of rain on the plastic. "Get out!" An infantile voice screamed from the darkness of the structure. Mina emerged from behind the plastic curtains, holding a wooden stick in her hands like a sword. She was trembling from head to toe, but she stood in front of the shelter entrance, blocking their way. Her eyes were red from crying, but they shone with a defensive fury. "Don't come closer," she shouted, waving the stick. "I have nothing. I already told you I don't have money. If you come closer, I will scream." Aiken raised his hands, showing his open palms. Seeing that little girl, so fragile, trying to defend her castle of trash against an adult man, disarmed him completely. "I don't want to hurt you," Aiken said, his voice hoarse. He took a slow step forward. "Mina, that's your name, isn't it?" "Aminat, put down the stick." "Liar," she accused. "You are bad. You threw me to the ground. You wanted to steal my bracelet. Get out." "No," Kunle interrupted, stepping forward, letting go of his father's hand. "We don't want to steal from you. Look." Kunle reached into his pocket again and pulled out the silver coin. It shone in the gloom of the alley like a small moon. "I brought it for you," the boy said, extending his hand. "It's for the milk. Take it." Mina lowered the stick a few centimeters. She looked at the coin, then she looked at Kunle. The boy's innocence was a universal language she understood, unlike the cruel complexity of adults. "Why?" she asked with distrust. "What do you want in return?" "Nobody gives anything for free." Aiken swallowed hard. He felt his heart was going to leap out of his mouth. He had to ask the question that had brought him running to this hell. "The bracelet," Aiken began, and saw Mina tense up again. "I don't want it, I swear. I just need to know who taught you how to make that knot." "The infinity knot." Mina frowned, confused. She lowered the stick completely, but didn't move from the entrance. "Nobody taught me," she said softly. "My mama Adura made it. She makes them. She says they are to tie luck." But her voice broke, and she looked inside the plastic shack. "But I think ours broke. She is very ill." Aiken's world tilted on its axis. "My mama Adura made it." "Your mama Adura?" Aiken asked, feeling his legs give way again. He took another step, almost involuntarily, towards the plastic curtain. "Is she in there?" "Yes, but she can't have visitors," Mina said, blocking the way again, though with less conviction. "She's sleeping. She has a high fever. That's why I wanted the milk. She says she's thirsty, but water tastes bad to her." Aiken didn't ask permission. This time he couldn't. The force that propelled him was greater than any social norm or courtesy. "I need to see her," he said. And it wasn't an order. It was a plea. "Papa," Kunle warned, scared by the intensity in his father's voice. Aiken advanced. Mina tried to stop him, but he gently pushed her aside, a contrast to his earlier violence in the supermarket. "I'm just going to look, I promise." Aiken pushed aside the blue plastic that served as a door. The smell of sickness, stale sweat, and cheap medicine hit him. He entered the gloom. His eyes took a few seconds to adjust to the darkness. The interior was suffocating. There was an old mattress thrown over wooden pallets to keep it off the damp ground, and on the mattress, under a patched gray blanket, was a small lump. A dry, deep cough shook the lump. Aiken approached, feeling like he was walking on glass. He knelt beside the mattress, not caring that the mud stained his designer trousers. The woman on the mattress stirred. Her hair was completely white, sparse and tangled. Her skin was like wrinkled parchment, clinging to her bones. She was consumed by life, by hunger, by the years. But then she opened her eyes. They weren't defeated eyes. They were deep, honey-colored eyes, surrounded by 1,000 wrinkles, but with a spark of lucidity that defied death. She looked at the man in the suit who invaded her humble dwelling. She blinked slowly, confused by the fever. Aiken felt the air escape his lungs. 30 years had passed. Her hair was white, her skin was marked, her teeth were missing, but that gaze that had comforted him when his own biological father beat him drunk, that gaze that had given him a hot plate of soup when there was nothing in his house. Mama Adura tere, Akin whispered with the voice of a 7-year-old boy. The old woman frowned, trying to focus. Her bony hand came out from under the blanket and fumbled in the air. "Who is it?" Her voice was a raspy hiss. "I don't have money, sir. Leave us." "No, Mama Adura, Look at me. Akin took off the sunglasses he was still wearing on his head, as if that could also remove the years of cynicism. It's me. I'm Akin, Mama Bola's son, the boy with the red tricycle. The old woman's hand stopped in the air. Her eyes opened a little wider, fixed on Akin's face, searching beneath the well-groomed beard, beneath the hydrated skin, beneath the businessman's demeanor, searching for the boy she had fed. Akin. Ah, she whispered, and a solitary tear welled from her tired eyes, the one who promised to return. The phrase fell on Akin like a ton of bricks, the one who promised to return. Memory hit him with the force of a tsunami the day he left. Adopted by a distant, rich family after his mother's death, he was 10 years old. He got into the black car crying and shouted to his neighbor, the only one who had cared for him, "I'll come back, Mama Adura. I'll be rich, and I'll come for you, so you don't have to sell bracelets anymore. I promise." 30 years had passed, and he never came back, until today, when destiny had dragged him by the ear to this alley. Yes. Akin lowered his head, and the tears he had held back for decades began to fall onto his hands, wetting the dirt floor. It's me, and I came too late. My God, I came so late. The weight of a broken promise. The cry of a powerful man is a sound that nature does not expect. It is guttural, clumsy, like the creaking of a building collapsing from its foundations. Akin, the financial shark, the man who didn't blink when firing hundreds of employees to balance a ledger, was broken on the packed earth floor. His hands clutched Mama Adura's tattered blanket as if it were a sacred shroud. Forgive me, Mama," Akin repeated, his face buried in the mattress. The smell of dampness and sickness filled his nose, but it was the smell of his childhood, the smell of truth he had tried to wash away with French colognes. Mama Adura, with a titanic effort, raised her trembling hand. Her fingers, deformed by years of arthritis and hard work, sought Akin's hair. She stroked it with the same tenderness she had 30 years ago, when he came crying because the other children mocked his broken shoes. "There, my child, there," she whispered with a weak smile that showed her pale gums. "Don't cry. Tears don't cure hunger or fever. They only clean the eyes to see better." Akin lifted his head. His blue eyes were bloodshot, swollen. "I forgot you, Mama Adura. That's the truth," he confessed, and the words burned his throat like acid. There were no excuses about work, or about his adoptive family, or about lack of time. It was a naked confession. "I got lost in money. I believed that if I didn't look back, the past would disappear. But you were here waiting for me. I didn't wait for you to save me, Akin," she said, and a dry cough shook her fragile body, making her chest sound like a bag of stones. "I waited because I wanted to see what kind of man you had become. I wanted to know if that good heart you had was still beating beneath the expensive clothes." Mina watched the scene from the entrance with the wooden stick still in her hand, but lowered. Her eyes darted from the old woman to the rich man, confused. She didn't understand how this monster who had humiliated her in the supermarket was now weeping at her Mama Adura's feet like a scolded child. "Mama Adura," Mina said, taking a timid step towards the mattress. "Do you know him? Is he the one you tell me about in your stories? The boy with the tricycle?" Mama Adura slowly turned her head towards her granddaughter. The love in her gaze was so intense it illuminated the gloom of the shack. "Yes, my life. It's him, the one I told you would come one day, though he took a little longer than expected," Mama Adura said, trying to add a touch of humor, but it ended in a grimace of pain. Akin looked at Mina. Now he truly saw her. He no longer saw a vagrant. He saw Mama Adura's features in her. He saw the same defiant chin, the same dignity in poverty. "She is." Akin began to ask. "She is my Lucia's daughter," Mama Adura replied, and a shadow of infinite sadness crossed her face. "Lucia died 2 years ago, from poorly treated pneumonia. We couldn't afford a doctor. She passed away in my arms, just as I am leaving now." The revelation hit Akin like a physical punch. Lucia. He remembered Lucia. She was Mama Adura's youngest daughter who used to play hide and seek with him. She had died for lack of money, for lack of the help he had promised. Guilt transformed into something heavier, something unbearable. If he had returned 5 or 10 years ago, Lucia would be alive. Mina wouldn't be an orphan. "No," Akin whimpered, closing his eyes tightly. "My God, what have I done?" "Don't blame yourself for what you didn't do, Akin," Mama Adura told him, squeezing his hand with surprising strength. Focus on what you can do now. I am already leaving. My ticket is punched. But, she pointed to Mina with a trembling finger. She will be alone. She has no one. The landlord will evict us tomorrow if we don't pay. They will take her to a government orphanage or worse, to the streets. The old woman fixed her honey eyes on Akin's. Look at me, Akin. I don't want your money from me. I don't want hospitals or medicines that only prolong the agony. I want a promise. But this time, a man's promise. One that won't break with time. Akin nodded frantically, taking Mama Adura's hands in his. Anything. Ask me anything. I give you my entire fortune. I give you my house. I don't want your house, Mama Adura whispered, her voice growing fainter like a candle burning out. I want you to take care of her, not to let the world consume her, to give her the opportunity you had. Swear it to me. I swear, Akin said with a firm, solemn voice. By my life, Mama Adura, I swear it. She will never be hungry again. She will never be cold again. She will be like my own blood. Kunle, who had remained silent by the plastic door, slowly approached. He knelt beside his father, said nothing, but placed his small hand on Akin's shoulder. It was a gesture of support, of validation. His father, for the first time, was a real hero in his eyes. Mama Adura, I'm scared, Mina sobbed, letting go of the stick and running to hug the old woman. She snuggled against Mama Adura's skeletal chest, seeking protection where there were only bones and skin. Don't go. Don't leave me with him. I don't know him. Shh, my child. Mama Adura stroked Mina's dirty hair. He is good. He was just a little lost, but he has found himself now. He has come home. Suddenly, Mama Adura's body stiffened. Her eyes opened disproportionately wide, staring at a fixed point on the rusted corrugated iron ceiling. A violent gasp shook her. Mama Adura, Mina screamed. Mama Adura began to cough, but it wasn't a normal cough. It was a wet, tearing sound. Dark blood spurted from her lips, staining the gray pillow. Her breathing became an agonizing whistle, rapid and shallow, from words to deeds. Panic erupted in the small room like a grenade. Mama Adura, breathe, Akin shouted, sitting up abruptly. He held her by the shoulders, trying to ease her breathing. But the old woman was drowning in her own fluids. Papa, do something, Kunle cried, terrified. Water, bring water, Akin ordered Mina, though he knew water would be useless. Mina ran towards a half-empty plastic bottle in the corner, but her hands trembled so much that she dropped it. The water spilled on the dirt floor, instantly creating mud. No, the girl cried. Mama Adura, don't die. Akin pulled his mobile phone from the inner pocket of his jacket. His fingers slipped on the touchscreen, stained with Mama Adura's blood. He dialed the emergency number desperately. Come on, answer, answer, he roared into the phone. The signal was weak. 1 bar, sometimes none. They were in a black hole of the city, a place where not even cell signals wanted to enter. Finally, the call connected. Emergencies. What is your... I need an ambulance now, Akin shouted, interrupting the operator. I have an elderly woman, severe respiratory failure. She's coughing blood. She's dying now. Calm down, sir. Give me the exact address. I don't know the exact address. It's the Batcher settlement behind the Grand Mart, entering through the alley by the abandoned factory, at the end of the dirt path. There was a silence on the other end of the line, a bureaucratic, cold, deadly silence. Sir, that's a red zone, the operator said in a monotonous tone. Ambulances cannot enter there without police escort. The safety protocol indicates that we must wait for a patrol to secure the perimeter before entering. Akin felt his blood boil in his temples. Protocol? She's dying. I am Chief Akin Wale. I have money. I'll pay whatever it takes. Send a helicopter if necessary. Sir, it doesn't matter who you are. We cannot risk medical personnel. You must wait for the police. The estimated arrival time is 40 minutes. In 40 minutes, she'll be dead. Akin roared and slammed the phone against the corrugated iron wall. The expensive phone shattered and fell to the ground, unusable. Silence returned to the room, broken only by Mama Adura's agonizing gurgles. Her eyes were glazing over. Her hand, still holding Mina's, was losing strength. Akin looked around. He was alone. His money was useless. His influence was useless. His name was useless. In that 10x 10 feet room full of misery, only his hands and his will mattered. He looked at Kunle. The boy was pale, but not crying. He looked at his father, waiting for a solution. Kunle, Akin said with an oddly calm voice, that icy calm that precedes extreme action. Take Mina's hand. Don't let go. Yes, Papa. Akin took off his designer bespoke jacket, threw it to the ground over the mud and blood without looking at it. He rolled up the sleeves of his immaculate white shirt to his elbows. He leaned over Mama Adura. Mama Adura, you're not going to die here, he whispered in her ear. Not in this hole. I promised you. You're going to have a clean bed. You're going to have air. Hold on a little longer. With a fluid movement, Akin slipped his arms under the old woman's legs and back. She was light, painfully light, like a bird made of hollow bones. As he lifted her, Mama Adura's head fell back, inert. Let's go, Akin shouted to the children. He left the shack carrying Mama Adura in his arms. The sunlight in the alley blinded him for an instant. Run to the car, he ordered. The scene was surreal. A man dressed in business clothes, stained with blood and dirt, running through a filthy alley with a dying old woman in his arms, followed by two children, one in a private school uniform and another dressed in rags. The neighborhood woke up. People came out of other shacks upon hearing the screams. Men with hard stares, women with children in their arms. Some blocked their path, curious or threatening. In that neighborhood, a man in a suit usually meant trouble, evictions, police, or debts. A young man with tattoos on his neck stood in Akin's way. Where are you taking her, boss? What did you do to the old woman? Akin didn't stop. He didn't slow down. He fixed his blue eyes on the area boys with a murderous intensity. Get out of the way or I'll kill you, Akin roared. It wasn't an empty threat. It was the voice of an animal protecting its pack. Desperation gave him an aura of danger that money had never given him. The area boy saw something in Akin's eyes. He saw madness. He saw truth, and he stepped aside. Clear the way for him, the area boy shouted to the others. He's taking Mama to the hospital. The Red Sea of poverty parted. People moved aside. Akin ran. His lungs burned. His arms, accustomed to lifting weights at the gym, began to ache, not from the weight, but from the tension. Mama Adura coughed against his chest, staining his white shirt bright red. We're almost there, Mama Adura. We're almost there. Akin gasped. They emerged from the alley onto the main avenue. The sun beat down on the asphalt. Akin's car, a black armored sedan, was poorly parked on the sidewalk, its hazard lights flashing, just as he had left it. Kunle, open the back door, he shouted. The boy ran ahead and pulled the handle. Akin carefully deposited Mama Adura onto the cream-colored leather seats with exquisite care, not caring about ruining the thousands of naira upholstery. Get in quickly. Mina hesitated. She looked at the shiny car, then at her dirty clothes. I'll make it dirty, she murmured, conditioned by years of rejection. Akin grabbed her arm and almost forcibly pulled her into the car, seating her next to her grandmother. I don't care about the car. Get in, he shouted, closing the door. Akin jumped into the driver's seat. The engine roared with the power of 400 horses. He looked in the rearview mirror. Mama Adura was pale, her eyes closed. Mina cried in silence, holding her grandmother's hand. Kunle held the other hand. Don't fall asleep, Mama Adura, Akin said, shifting into first gear and flooring the accelerator. Talk to her, Mina, talk to her. Don't let her sleep. The car screeched its tires, leaving black marks on the pavement, and shot into traffic, dodging cars and running the first red light. Akin gripped the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. He wasn't going to the nearest public hospital. He was going to the Eco-Medical Center, the most expensive and exclusive hospital in the city, where he was a shareholder. You're going to live, stubborn old woman, Akin muttered, tears streaming down his face, mixing with sweat. You're going to live to see me keep my promise, even if I have to buy the devil's soul to do it. As he drove like a getaway driver, dodging honks and insults from other motorists, Akin felt a small hand touch his shoulder from the back seat. It was Kunle. Papa, the boy said, his voice trembling but full of pride. You are brave. That phrase, coming from his son, was worth more than all the corporate mergers in his career. But Akin couldn't savor it. The sound of Mama Adura's breathing was getting weaker and weaker. Pray, Kunle, Akin ordered, his voice broken. Pray everything you know, because we need a miracle. The car accelerated even more, becoming a black metal bullet, cutting through the city's indifference, carrying within it the most valuable cargo Akin had ever transported, a life that had no market price, the glass wall. The interior of the luxury sedan became a capsule of anguish at 120 kilometers per hour. The outside world was just a blurry streak of lights and concrete flying past through the tinted windows. Inside, the dominant sound was not the German-engineered engine, but the raspy, agonizing whistle of Mama Adura's lungs, fighting for one more breath of air. "Hold on, Mama Adura. Don't you dare close your eyes," Akin shouted, checking the rearview mirror every 3 seconds. His hands gripped the steering wheel with such force that the leather creaked. He ran another red light, dodging a delivery truck by millimeters, which honked furiously at him. In the back seat, the scene was heartbreaking. Mina, small and terrified, held her grandmother's head on her lap. Her tears fell on the old woman's wrinkled face, mixing with dirt and sweat. "Mama Adura, wake up, please," the girl sobbed, stroking Mama Adura's cold cheek. "Look, we're in a carriage, like in the stories. We're going to the castle where they will cure you." Kunle, sitting on the other side, held Mama Adura's hand. The boy, accustomed to a world where everything was solved with a call or a card, was facing the absolute fragility of life for the first time. "Papa," her hand is very cold, Kunle said, his voice trembling with panic. "Papa, she's getting cold. We're almost there. We're almost there," Akin roared, sharply turning the steering wheel to the right. The car skidded as it entered the access ramp of the Eco-Metropolitan Sanatorium, a fortress of glass and steel reserved for the city's elite. There were no waiting lines or plastic chairs. There were fountains, valet parking, and silence. Akin slammed on the brakes right in front of the main revolving door, ignoring the area designated for ambulances on the side. The screech of tires made 2 security guards and a valet in a red waistcoat jump from their posts. "Sir, you cannot park here," the valet shouted, running towards the car with an annoyed gesture. "This is the executive entrance. Move your vehicle immediately, or we will call the tow truck." Akin didn't wait. He kicked the door open and got out. His appearance was terrifying, an expensive suit ruined, his white shirt soaked in dark blood on his chest and arms, his hair disheveled, and his eyes wide with adrenaline. "I need a stretcher now," Akin roared, running towards the back door to get Mama Adura out. The valet recoiled, scared by the blood. "Sir, what happened to you? Was there an accident?" the employee stammered. Akin opened the back door. The smell of illness and misery escaped the car's air-conditioned interior, clashing with the hospital's aseptic air. He carried Mama Adura out in his arms. The old woman was inert. Her head hung back like a broken doll. Her old, dirty clothes contrasted violently with the luxurious surroundings. Mina and Kunle got out of the car, running to follow Akin. A security guard, a burly man in a tactical uniform, blocked their path to the automatic glass doors. "Stop right there," the guard said, raising one hand and placing the other on his baton. "Sir, you cannot enter with that person here. This is a private hospital. The public hospital is 20 blocks away. I suggest you." Blind fury seized Akin. He had no time for the bureaucracy of classism. "Get out of my way," Akin shouted without stopping. "Sir, stop." The guard tried to physically block him, grabbing Akin by the shoulder. "Hygiene and safety regulations. That woman is an indigene. She cannot." Akin reacted with primitive violence. Using the momentum of his run, he charged the guard with his shoulder, knocking him to the ground. The man fell with a dry thud, surprised. "Nobody touches me," Akin roared, regaining his balance without letting go of Mama Adura. The glass doors opened. Akin burst into the lobby. The contrast was brutal. The lobby was an immense space, with white marble floors, soft classical music, and air conditioning with a lavender scent. People sat in leather armchairs checking their phones. Ladies with jewels waiting for cosmetic surgery results. Everyone froze. They saw a blood-stained man enter, carrying a human bundle wrapped in rags, followed by 2 crying children, and a security guard picking himself up from the floor outside. The silence was broken by murmurs of horror. "A doctor!" Akin's shout resonated in the vaulted ceiling, echoing like a cannon blast. "She's dying! Someone help me!" An immaculate receptionist behind a granite counter stood up pale, adjusting her glasses. "Sir, please lower your voice. You are frightening the patients," she said, trying to maintain composure. "You must go to emergencies through the side entrance and fill out the admission and medical insurance forms." Akin reached the counter, gasping. He carefully placed Mama Adura on one of the beige velvet waiting armchairs, instantly staining it with mud and fluids. People around them recoiled in disgust, covering their noses. "I'm not filling out any damned papers," Aiken said, leaning over the counter, his face centimeters from the receptionist's. His blue eyes burned. "She's not breathing well. I need the head of emergency. Now." "Sir, without medical insurance or a prior deposit, we cannot admit homeless people," the receptionist insisted, looking with disdain at Mama Adura and then at Mina, who trembled beside the armchair. "This is not a charity hospital." Mina flinched. She knew that look. It was the same as the supermarket cashier's, the look that said, "You are worth nothing here." Aiken slammed his fist on the counter, making pens and the computer jump. The sound was like a gunshot. "Listen to me carefully," Aiken shouted, his voice radiating power and menace. "I am Chief Akinwale. I own the construction company that built the north wing of this building. I know the CEO. I play golf with him on Sundays. If that woman is not in an intensive care unit in the next 60 seconds, I swear to God I will buy this hospital just to demolish it with you inside. Do you understand me?" The receptionist swallowed hard. The Akinwale name, she recognized it. She looked at the ruined suit, the watch on his wrist that was worth more than her 5-year salary. Fear changed sides. "Code blue in the lobby," the woman shouted into the phone with a trembling voice. "Trauma team to the lobby, immediately. VIP patient." "She's not a VIP," Akin corrected, turning to Mama Adura and taking her cold hand. "She's my family." The double doors at the back burst open. A team of doctors and nurses dressed in blue rushed towards them, pushing a high-tech stretcher. The organized chaos of modern medicine enveloped the scene. "What do we have?" asked the lead doctor, a gray-haired man with authority, as he helped Aiken transfer Mama Adura to the stretcher. "Woman, approx. 70 years old, severe malnutrition, coughing blood. I think it's advanced pneumonia or tuberculosis. Lost consciousness 3 minutes ago," Aiken recited, surprised by the clarity of his own report. "Come on, oxygen, IV, the doctor ordered. Take her to Trauma 1. The stretcher began to move quickly. "Mama, Adura!" Mina cried, trying to run after the stretcher. A nurse gently stopped her. "You can't go in, dear. You have to wait here." Mina struggled, but she was weak. She watched as the swinging doors swallowed the only person in the world who loved her. The stretcher disappeared. Aiken stood in the middle of the lobby, his arms hanging at his sides, stained with dried blood. His agitated breathing was the only sound. People looked at him, but no one dared to say anything anymore. The supermarket monster had transformed into something they couldn't comprehend. Kunle approached Mina, who was crying in silence, and put his arm around her shoulders. "My papa will save her," the boy said with conviction. "He always wins." Aiken turned and looked at the two children. He saw the mix of mud and tears on their faces. He felt the weight of 30 years of selfishness falling on his shoulders. No, he didn't always win. In fact, he had just realized that he had been losing for decades. The thread that never broke. Time in a hospital is not measured in minutes, but in heartbeats. 2 hours had passed. Aiken hadn't moved from the private waiting room, where they had been taken after the incident in the lobby. He hadn't washed. He hadn't changed. He was still in his blood-stained shirt, sitting on a leather sofa, elbows on his knees, head in his hands. Kunle and Mina sat opposite him. A kind nurse had brought them juice and sandwiches. Mina ate with a heartbreaking voracity, devouring every crumb as if she feared someone would take it from her. Kunle, on the other hand, hadn't touched his food. He just watched the girl, pushing his own plate towards her when she finished hers. Aiken looked up and observed Mina. Now, in the calmer light, he could see the details. She had the same eyes Mama Adura had when she was young, that mix of sweetness and steel. "Aminat," Akin said. His voice sounded hoarse, exhausted. The girl paused with the sandwich halfway to her mouth. She lowered her gaze, scared. The trauma of the supermarket was still latent. For her, this man was still dangerous, even though he had brought them there. "Tell me." Aiken searched for the words, trying to be gentle. "The bracelet. Why did your Mama Adura give it to you? What did she tell you when she put it on you?" Mina swallowed the bite with difficulty. She wiped her mouth with the back of her dirty hand. "She gave it to me when Mama died," she said softly. "She said it was so I wouldn't feel alone." Mina put her hand in her pocket. The dress she wore had large, patched pockets, and she pulled out the red thread bracelet that Akin had tried to snatch from her in the supermarket. She held it in the palm of her hand like a sacred offering. She told me a story, the girl continued, looking at the weave. She said that a long time ago, there was a boy who lived next door to her, a boy who was always sad because his parents didn't love him. She said she made him a bracelet like this one to tie him to life, because the boy wanted to leave, he wanted to disappear. Akin felt a shiver run down his spine. He remembered that night. He was 8 years old. He was sitting on the curb in the rain, determined to escape home, to run until his legs failed and let himself freeze to death. Mama Adura found him, took him to her shack, gave him cinnamon tea, and wove the bracelet for him. As long as you wear this, you are tied to me, Akin, and I will not let you go, so you cannot leave. She told me, Mina's voice trembled, that the boy left one day in a big black car, that they took him far away to be a prince, but that she knew he would come back. That's why she wove. Wove? Akin asked, confused. She made more bracelets? Yes, many, every night, Mina nodded. When we didn't have food, she sold everything. She sold her wedding ring, she sold the old television, she sold her bed, but she never sold the red bracelets. She kept them in a shoebox. She would say, "These are for when Akin comes back, so he knows I was waiting for him." Akin covered his mouth with his hand to stifle a sob. It can't be. But Mina lowered her voice, ashamed. Last week, when she got very sick and we didn't even have water, she took out the box. She cried a lot and went to the market and sold them all of them, except this one, which is mine. She sold them? Akin asked with a lump in his throat. Yes, she bought medicine for me because I had a bad cough. She cured me, but she was left with nothing. Mina lifted her tear-filled eyes to Akin. She sold her memories of you to save me. She loved you very much, sir, more than anyone. She always said, Akin is good, Akin will come. The weight of the revelation crushed Akin. Mama Adura had not only saved him in the past, she had sacrificed the symbol of her hope, her emotional connection with him, to save her granddaughter. She had given up her treasure to give life, and meanwhile, he had been buying watches, yachts, and despising people like her in supermarkets. The magnitude of his own moral misery became evident. He was the poor one. He was the spiritually destitute one. That woman dying in a hospital bed without a penny was the true millionaire. Forgive me, God, Akin whispered, closing his eyes. Kunle got up and walked towards his father. Papa, the boy said, you are to blame for her being sick, right? The question was direct, brutal, unfiltered. Akin opened his eyes and looked at his son. He could have lied. He could have said no, that life is like that poverty is complex. But he looked into Kunle's eyes and knew that this was the definitive moment of his fatherhood. Yes, son, Akin said in a firm but broken voice. I am to blame because I could have come back years ago, because I have all this money and I let the person who saved my life live in the slums. I am to blame for being blind. Kunle nodded, processing the information with the seriousness of an adult. Then you have to fix it, the boy said. Not just with money, you have to fix it for real. I will, Kunle, I swear. At that moment, the door of the waiting room opened. The gray-haired doctor entered. His face was serious, inscrutable. He took off his surgical mask and sighed. Akin jumped to his feet, his heart pounding in his throat. Mina stood up too, clutching Akin's trouser leg instinctively. Doctor, Akin said, fearing the worst. How is she? Tell me the truth. The doctor looked at Akin, then at the children. Chief Akin Wale, the patient arrived in critical condition, bilateral pneumonia, severe dehydration, and an alarming case of anemia. Her heart is very weak. She has suffered too much wear and tear for a woman her age. Don't give me diagnoses, Akin interrupted desperately. Tell me if she's going to live. The doctor paused, choosing his words carefully. We stabilized her. She is in an induced coma so her body can rest. But the next 12 hours are crucial. If she makes it through the night, there is hope. But I must be honest, her will to live seems exhausted. Clinically, we have done everything. Now it depends on her and if she has any reason to stay in this world. Akin felt his knees tremble, but he remained standing. She has a reason, Akin said, looking at Mina and then clenching his fist. She has too, and I'm going to make sure she remembers it. Akin turned to the doctor. I want to go in now. Sir, she's in the ICU. It's restricted. I don't care. I'm going in. I need to talk to her. I need to tell her I kept my promise. She needs to hear my voice to know that waiting 30 years was not in vain. The doctor saw the determination in Akin's eyes. It wasn't the arrogance of money. This time, it was the desperation of love. All right, 5 minutes. Just you. Akin looked at Kunle. Take care of Mina. Don't let go of her. Never, Kunle responded, taking the girl's hand. Akin walked towards the double doors. He was going to fight the most important battle of his life. Not in a boardroom, but beside a hospital bed, trying to convince a dying old woman that life, despite all the pain he had caused her, was still worth living. The whispering room, the sound inside the intensive care unit was not human. It was a digital symphony, cold and rhythmic. Beep, beep, beep. Each beep was a reminder that Mama Adura's life hung by a thread as fine as the one she used to weave her bracelets. Akin entered the glass cubicle. The air inside was sterilized, cold, odorless, a violent contrast to the human warmth and smell of wet earth from the alley he had pulled her out of just hours before. He approached the bed. Mama Adura looked even smaller between the hospital's white sheets. She was connected to tubes and wires that monitored every beat of her tired heart. An artificial respirator covered her mouth and nose, inflating her chest with a mechanical rhythm she could no longer sustain herself. Akin dragged a metal chair and sat down heavily. He didn't care that his once immaculate shirt was stiff with dried blood and mud. He leaned towards her, afraid to touch her, afraid to break her. Mama Adura, he whispered. His voice sounded strange in the clinical silence. It's me. It's the ungrateful one. No one responded. Only the monitors beeped. Akin reached out and took her hand. It was cold, full of age spots and old scars. Scars from stove burns, paper cuts, sewing needles. They were the hands of a woman who had fought every day of her life so others could eat. I lied outside, Akin continued, speaking with the urgency of someone confessing before an execution. I didn't forget you because of work. I didn't forget because I was busy. Akin squeezed the inert hand, staring at the old woman's closed eyelids, waiting to see them tremble. I forgot you because I was ashamed, he confessed, and the words came out like broken glass from his throat. When I was adopted, when I entered that world of private schools and houses with pools, I wanted to erase everything I once was. I hated remembering hunger. I hated remembering the cold. And you were the living memory of my poverty. So I buried you in my memory so I could feel like a prince. Tears flowed again, hot and silent. I was a coward, Mama Adura. I thought money would clean me. I thought if I wore expensive suits, no one would see the dirty boy from the alley. But today, my son, a 7-year-old boy, had more humanity than I had in my entire life. He saw you. I only saw an obstacle. Akin rested his forehead on the edge of the bed, sobbing uncontrollably. Don't die, please. Don't leave me with this debt. Don't leave me as the villain of your story. Wake up and shout at me. Wake up and hit me. But don't leave in silence. I need you to see that I can change. I need you to see that Akin is still here beneath all this rubbish I put on myself. Suddenly, a change in the monitor's rhythm made Akin lift his head sharply. The beep accelerated slightly. Akin looked at Mama Adura's face. She didn't open her eyes. There was no movie-like movement. But in the hand he held, he felt something, a slight pressure, almost imperceptible, like the fluttering of a dying butterfly. It wasn't a strong squeeze. It was just a spasm, perhaps a nervous reflex, or perhaps, just perhaps, she was telling him she heard. Mama Adura? He asked, his heart racing. The pressure did not repeat. The heart rate returned to its slow, dangerous cadence. But for Akin, it was enough. It was a spark in the darkness. I promise you one thing, Mama, Akin said, angrily wiping away his tears, transforming the pain into steel resolve. Aminat is not going to be a statistic. She is not going to be the poor girl. From today, that child is sacred to me. If I have to burn my company to give her a future, I'll burn it. If I have to kneel before the whole world, I'll kneel. But she is going to have the life you dreamed for me. And this time I will not fail. Akin stood up. He was no longer the man who had entered. Something had broken inside him, but it was a necessary break, like when a poorly healed bone is rebroken, so it can heal straight. He kissed Mama Adura's cold forehead and turned around. He had a mission, and he had enemies to face. But this time the enemies were not poverty or hunger. The enemy was his own former life, the price of redemption. Upon leaving the ICU, the hallway was dim. Only emergency lights and the glow of vending machines illuminated the waiting area. There they were. Kunle had fallen asleep on the synthetic leather sofa, with his head resting on Mina's lap. And Mina, she wasn't sleeping. She sat upright, rigid, her eyes wide open, watching over the rich boy's sleep like a soldier. She stroked Kunle's hair with instinctive softness, humming an inaudible melody, the same one Mama Adura surely sang to her. The image struck Akin, two worlds, supposed to be enemies, united by innocence. The boy who had everything, and the girl who had nothing, sleeping together under the neon light. There were no prejudices there, no social classes, just two frightened children seeking warmth. Akin approached slowly. The sound of his hard-soled shoes echoed in the hallway, and Mina immediately looked up, startled, protecting Kunle with her arms. "Easy," Akin said, raising his hands. "It's me." Mina relaxed her shoulders, but didn't take her eyes off Akin's. She was looking for answers. "She?" the girl asked with a thread of a voice, afraid to finish the sentence. "She's fighting," Akin responded, sitting on the floor in front of them, to be at their level. He didn't want to look down on her ever again. "Your Mama Adura is the strongest woman I have ever known. She's resting." Mina nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. "Are they going to send us away?" she asked suddenly. "What?" Akin frowned. "From the hospital," Mina clarified, looking around. "The nurses look at us badly. They say we smell of the streets, and my clothes are dirty. They always send us away from nice places." The brutal innocence of the question hurt Akin more than a blow. "No one is going to send you away," he said firmly. "This is my hospital. Well, a part of it, and you are my honored guest. If anyone looks at you badly, you tell me." At that moment, the silence of the hallway was broken by a shrill sound. Kin's phone, which had survived in his inner pocket, the staff had retrieved it from the shack floor and returned it. Broken, but functional, began to vibrate and ring. Akin pulled it out. The screen was cracked, but the name was clearly visible. Mr. Imika, partner. It was the call he had been dreading and expecting, the merger meeting. The 50 billion naira deal he was supposed to close that very afternoon. The reason he was in such a hurry at the supermarket. Akin looked at the phone, then at Mina with her broken shoes and her fear-filled gaze. He looked at Kunle sleeping peacefully. He answered, "Akin, where on earth are you?" Mr. Emeka's voice screamed from the other end, hysterical. "The Japanese investors have been waiting for 2 hours. They are furious. They are going to leave. We are losing the deal of the century. Tell me you're on your way." Akin listened to the screams. 5 hours ago, that call would have made him break out in a cold sweat. He would have invented lies. He would have run. He would have killed to get to that boardroom. Now, Mr. Emeka's voice sounded ridiculous, distant, like the buzzing of an annoying fly. "I'm not going, Emeka," Akin said with a calm that chilled his partner's blood. "What? Are you crazy? It's the merger. It's your career. If you don't show up in 20 minutes, they're going to sue you for breach of contract. They're going to destroy you, Akin. You're going to lose billions." Akin looked at his hands stained with dried blood. "Mama Adura's blood. Listen to me closely, Emeka," Akin said, lowering his voice so as not to wake Kunle, but with a tone that cut like a scalpel. "Let them go. Let them take their money. Let them take the contract. I don't care. But what's wrong with you? Are you drunk?" "No. I'm awake for the first time in years. I'm awake." Akin stood up and walked a few steps away from the children towards the window overlooking the illuminated city. "Cancel the meeting, cancel the gala dinner, and tell the lawyers to prepare the papers to liquidate my shares in the southern subsidiary." "Akin, this is professional suicide." "No, Emeka, this is a rescue. I'm busy saving something that is priceless. Don't call me again today." Akin hung up and then did something definitive. He turned off the phone. He stood looking at the black device in his hand. It was his shackle, his connection to the world of vanity. He returned to the children. Kunle was beginning to wake up, rubbing his eyes. "Papa," the boy asked drowsily. "Did we win?" Punjin smiled, a sad but genuine smile, the first real one in a long time. "Not yet, champion, but we've stopped losing." He knelt in front of Mina. The girl looked at him with curiosity. She had heard the conversation, although she didn't understand mergers or shares. She understood the tone. She understood that this man had just said no to something important to be there. "Aminat," Akin said, looking her in the eyes. "I know you're scared. I know I'm a stranger who treated you badly, and I will spend the rest of my life apologizing for that, but I need you to know something." Akin pointed towards the ICU door. Your mama Adura is going to get well. The doctors are magicians, but when she wakes up, you're not going back to that alley ever again. Mina frowned, confused. But we don't have a house. The landlord said if we didn't pay today. It doesn't matter what the landlord said, Aiken interrupted. Listen to me. You have family, perhaps not by blood, but blood is sometimes the least important thing. Your mama Adura was like a mother to me. That makes you. Akin searched for the right word and found it in his son's heart. That makes us family. Aiken took out his wallet. He didn't take out money. He took out a simple white personal business card. He turned it over and wrote a fixed phone number with a pen borrowed from the nurse. I'm not going to give you money to leave, he said. I'm going to give you a home. You and Mama Adura. Kunle always wanted a sister, and I need to learn to be human again, and I think only you can teach me. Mina looked at the card, then at Aiken, her eyes filled with tears. No one had ever offered her a home. They had offered her coins, scraps, old clothes, but never a place to stay. Is it true? She asked, her voice broken. Or is it like the story of the prince who left? The prince was an idiot, Aiken said forcefully, but the man who is here is not leaving. I give you my word of honor, and this time I seal it with this. Aiken extended his hand, not to give, but to ask. Will you let me see the bracelet again? Mina hesitated for a second, then reached into her pocket and pulled out the red thread. She handed it to him. Aiken didn't put it on himself. He took Mina's wrist, small and fragile, and with extreme delicacy, retied the bracelet on the girl's arm. This is not just a thread, Aminat. It's a promise. As long as you wear this, no one will harm you. I will be your shield. Kunle joined the moment, placing his hand over his father's and Mina's. And me too, the boy said. At that instant, the ICU door burst open. A nurse ran out, her face pale. Doctor, come quickly, she shouted down the hallway. The patient in bed 4 is going into cardiac arrest. The world stopped again. The monitor's sound, which had been rhythmic, became a continuous, high-pitched beep that pierced the glass walls. Pee! Aiken felt the ground disappear beneath his feet. No, he cried, getting up and running towards the glass door, forgetting all his promises of calm. Mama Adura. Mina's scream was a howl of pure pain that echoed throughout the hospital. The medical team rushed to Mama Adura's bed. Aiken reached the glass and pounded it with open palms, powerless, watching them charge the defibrillator paddles. Charging to 200. Clear. Mama Adura's body jumped on the bed with the electrical discharge. No rhythm. Again, charging to 300. Aiken remained pressed against the glass, watching as his only chance at redemption slipped through his fingers. Kunle hugged Mina, who covered her ears and closed her eyes, refusing to see the end of her world. Come on, Mama Adura, fight, Aiken shouted against the glass with tears of rage. Don't you dare leave now. Not now. The miracle of empty hands. The continuous beep of the cardiac monitor, that high-pitched, monotonous sound announcing the end of an existence, filled the room like a poisonous gas. Pee! For the doctors, it was a technical sound, a signal to initiate protocols. For Mina, it was the sound of her world collapsing. The girl covered her ears so tightly that her knuckles turned white. She curled into a ball on the hallway floor and began to scream. A silent cry choked in her throat, refusing to accept that the only light in her life was fading. Inside the glass cubicle, chaos was choreographed. Charging to 300 joules, the lead doctor shouted, sweat beading on his forehead. Everyone clear. Mama Adura's fragile body arched violently on the stretcher with the impact of the electrical discharge. She fell back, inert, like an abandoned rag doll. Aiken, on the other side of the glass, pounded the glass with his clenched fist. He felt no pain in his hand, only a desperation that burned his insides. Don't go, Mama Adura, he roared, his voice distorted by the thick glass. You don't have permission to leave. The doctor looked at the monitor. The green line remained flat, a straight road to death. No response, a nurse said in a tense voice. Doctor, she's been in asystole for 2 minutes. Saturation is on the floor. Come on. One more, the doctor ordered, though his eyes already showed resignation. Epinephrine, 1 milligram, charging to 360. Aiken couldn't take it anymore. Logic, rules, civilization, everything disappeared. He watched them charge the paddles again and felt they were electrocuting his own soul. He pushed the ICU door open and entered. Sir, "You cannot be here," a nurse shouted, trying to block his path. Akin didn't even look at her. He passed her like a freight train, ignoring sterility protocols. He reached the side of the bed just as the doctor was about to apply the paddles. "Wait!" Akin shouted, grabbing the bed rail. "Get him out of here! Security!" the doctor roared. "We're losing the patient. She hears me." Akin leaned over Mama Adura's ear, ignoring the chaos around him, ignoring the death that floated in the air. He took the old woman's hand, that cold, calloused hand, and squeezed it with both hands. "Mama Adura, listen to me. It's Akin." The monitor continued to beep. "P.E. You can't leave her alone," Akin whispered, his voice broken by tears, speaking directly to the spirit of the woman who had loved him when no one else did. "Aminat is outside. She's terrified. If you leave now, you condemn her. If you leave now, you break the promise. Sir, please." The doctor lowered the paddles, looking at the wall clock. He was about to declare the time of death. "No." Akin looked at the doctor with crazy eyes. "Give me 1 second." He looked at Mama Adura again. He leaned so close that his tears fell onto the old woman's waxy face. "Mama." The word left his mouth without him thinking it. He had never called his adoptive mother that, only her. "Mama, please come back. I swear I will be the man you wanted. I swear I will take care of her, but I need you to help me. Fight." Stubborn old woman. "Fight." Akin squeezed her hand tightly, transmitting all his energy, all his vitality, all his regret through that contact. And then it happened. It wasn't an explosion. It wasn't a lightning bolt. It was a sound. Beep. The continuous beep was cut for a fraction of a second. The doctor looked up sharply at the monitor. Beep, beep. The flat line jumped. A small green mountain appeared on the screen, followed by another weak, irregular, but present. A sepulchral silence fell over the room. The nurses froze. The doctor exhaled the air he had held. "We have a rhythm," the doctor whispered in disbelief. "Sinus rhythm, bradycardia, but it's there." Akin exhaled and fell to his knees beside the bed, sobbing, burying his face in the sheets. He felt as if his heart had been ripped out and put back in. "Stabilize the pressure," the doctor ordered, regaining professional control, but looking at Akin with a mixture of respect and awe. "Dopamine on continuous infusion. We're going to keep her here." Akin raised his head, looked at Mama Adura. Her chest moved, aided by the machine, but her heart beat by itself. She had come back. She had returned from the edge of the abyss because someone had called her by her name. Akin stood up, swaying. He had to go out. He had to tell them. He went out into the hallway. He was dizzy, exhausted, as if he had run a marathon. Mina and Kunle were huddled on the floor. Seeing Akin emerge, Mina stiffened, preparing for the final blow, for the news that would end her life. Akin dropped to the floor beside them. He didn't care about the suit. He didn't care about the image. He was at their eye level. He looked at Mina. The girl trembled so much that her teeth chattered. "She's alive," Akin said. Only 2 words. Mina stopped breathing for a second. "What?" she whispered, unable to process the hope. "She's alive, Aminat," Akin repeated, and a tired but luminous smile broke the mask of pain on his face. "Your Mama Adura is made of iron. She came back. She stayed with us." Mina looked Akin in the eyes, searching for the lie, searching for deceit, but she only saw truth. She saw the red eyes of a man who had cried. The girl let out a cry that was not of pain, but of liberation. And then she did something Akin didn't expect. She lunged towards him. Mina wrapped her thin, dirty arms around Akin's neck and buried her face in the man's chest, staining his blood-stained shirt with new tears. Thank you," she sobbed. Akin was paralyzed for an instant. The physical contact with the girl from the supermarket, the girl he had despised hours earlier, disarmed him. He felt the small, fragile body shake against his. Slowly, clumsily, Akin wrapped his big arms around the girl, pressed her against him, closed his eyes, and rested his chin on Mina's dirty head. "Don't thank me," he whispered. "Forgive me instead." Kunle joined the embrace. The 3 formed a human sculpture on the cold hospital floor, an emotionally ruined billionaire, a boy discovering reality, and a girl regaining hope. In that embrace, bank accounts and rags ceased to exist. There were only 3 hearts beating to the same rhythm of survival, the wall of bureaucracy. 2 days later, the morning sunlight streamed through the window of private room 405. It wasn't a normal hospital room. It looked like a hotel suite. There were fresh flowers on the bedside table, Egyptian cotton sheets, and a sofa bed where Akin had spent the last 48 hours sleeping in shifts, refusing to go home. Mama Adura was awake. Weak, yes, but awake. She no longer had the tube in her throat, only a clear oxygen mask. Mina was sitting on the bed, carefully brushing her grandmother's white hair. The girl was transformed. She no longer wore the rags from the supermarket. She wore a simple, clean blue dress and new shoes that Kunle had personally chosen at the hospital shop. Akin stood by the window talking on a new phone his assistant had brought him. His posture was tense. "I told you to sell the shares, Emeka," Akin said in a low but firm voice. "I don't care if the price went down. I need liquidity. Now I want to buy the land of the northern settlement." "Yes, all the land. Not to build a shopping mall, you idiot. To sanitize it, to urbanize it. No, I'm not going to evict anyone. I'm going to give them deeds. Do it." He hung up the phone, turned to the bed, and his face softened as he saw Mama Adura smile at Mina. "You look better, Mama Adura," Akin said, approaching. "I feel like I've been run over by a truck and then given a massage," she joked in a hoarse voice. "Akin, this is too much. This room, the nurses who come every 5 minutes, you're going to go broke. I have a lot of money, Mama Adura, too much. And for the first time I know how to spend it," he replied, taking her hand. At that moment, the room door opened without knocking. It wasn't a nurse. It was a woman in her 50s, dressed in a severe gray suit, with a folder under her arm and an expression of bureaucratic efficiency that chilled the blood. Behind her, 2 hospital security guards. Mina stopped brushing her grandmother's hair. Street instinct told her that this woman meant danger. She pressed herself against Mama Adura's side. "Good morning," the woman said without smiling. "I am Miss Obi from the Department of Social Services and Child Protection." Akin straightened up, instinctively placing himself between the woman and the bed. "I don't recall calling you," Akin said dryly. "The hospital reported the admission of a minor in a high-risk situation, accompanying an indigent patient in critical condition," the woman said, opening her folder and taking out a pen. "We have reviewed the case. Mrs. Teresa Mendoza has no fixed address, no verifiable income, and her health condition is precarious." The woman looked at Mina over her glasses. "The child is not schooled, shows signs of chronic malnutrition, and lives in unsanitary conditions. The state is assuming immediate custody." Mina let out a whimper and grabbed her grandmother's arm. Mama Adura tried to sit up, but she was too weak. "No," Mama Adura said with a choked voice. "Don't take her. She is my granddaughter." "Ma'am, you can barely take care of yourself," Miss Obi retorted coldly. "The child will be transferred to State Children's Home Number 4 until her legal situation is determined." "Officers, please proceed." The 2 guards stepped forward. Mina began to cry, terrified. "Akin," the girl cried, looking at the man who had promised to be her shield. Akin felt a cold fury rise up his spine. It wasn't the impulsive fury of the supermarket. It was the calculating fury of a man who knows he has power and is willing to use it. "Stop!" Akin's voice cracked like a whip. The guard stopped. Miss Obi looked at him with annoyance. "Sir, do not interfere. This is a legal procedure. If you obstruct authority..." Akin slowly walked towards her, invading her personal space. He was tall, imposing, and even though he wore casual clothes, he emanated an authority that made the official step back. "You are not taking anyone," Akin said with terrifying calm. "Listen carefully, ma'am. You say Mrs. Mendoza has no address. That is false. Her address is Akinwale Estate, 450 Los Robles Avenue. It is my residence." The woman blinked, confused. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that Mrs. Teresa is my foster mother," Akin lied with perfect fluidity. "And the child Aminat is under my direct protection. That is not stated in any document," Miss Obi stammered, looking at her papers. "It says here they were found in an irregular settlement, an administrative error that my lawyers are already correcting," Akin interrupted. "In fact, my lawyer is on his way with temporary custody documents signed by the grandmother, granting me legal guardianship of the minor and medical responsibility for the lady." Akin took out his wallet and extracted a card. "And I suggest, ma'am, that before you try to touch that child, you call your boss, the Regional Director of Social Services. He's a good friend of mine. Ask him if he wants to face a lawsuit for harassment and abuse of authority against a family that is paying for a private suite in this hospital." Miss Obi looked at the card, then at Akin, and finally at the luxurious room. She knew when she had lost a battle. The system was designed to crush the poor, not to fight billionaires. She closed her folder with a sharp snap. If you present the documents before 5 p.m., we will halt the transfer. But we will be watching, Chief Akinwale. Any irregularity, there won't be any. Good morning, Akin said, pointing to the door. The woman turned and left, followed by the guards. Silence returned to the room. Mina was still hugging Mama Adura, trembling. Akin turned to them. He exhaled a long sigh, releasing the tension. Is it true? Mama Adura asked, looking at him with wet eyes. You told them we live with you. Akin approached the bed and sat on the edge. He took Mina's hand, which still wore the red thread bracelet. I didn't lie to them, Mama Adura. I just told them the truth ahead of time. Akin looked at the girl. I promised you I would be your shield. A shield is useless if it's kept hidden. You're coming to live at home, you and Mama Adura. Kunle is already preparing the guest room. He says he needs someone to teach him how to play football for real, because I'm a mess. Mina looked at him incredulously. What if I misbehave? She asked with the insecurity of someone who has always been rejected. Akin smiled and stroked her cheek, wiping away a tear. Then I will punish you without desert, like a daughter. But never, listen closely, never will I throw you out on the street. That door closed forever, Aminat. Now you are an Akinwale, and the Akinwales take care of their own. Mama Adura closed her eyes, and 2 tears rolled down her wrinkled cheeks. She had waited 30 years. She had suffered unspeakable things. But seeing that man, the boy she once fed, become the father her granddaughter needed, she knew all the pain had been worth it. The circle had closed, the red thread had worked. The end of the thread, resolution, and legacy. Scene 1. The exit from the White Labyrinth. 3 weeks later, the midday sun hit the glass facade of the Eco-Metropolitan Sanatorium, but this time the light didn't seem cold or distant. It seemed like a blessing. The automatic doors opened with a soft hiss, and Akin emerged, pushing a wheelchair. In the chair was Mama Adura. She was no longer the bundle of dying bones who had entered that fateful night. Although still thin, and with sparse white hair, there was color in her cheeks. She wore a soft lavender wool outfit that Akin had bought for her, and a newly woven blanket rested on her lap. But most importantly was her gaze. Her honey eyes no longer sought death, but absorbed every detail of the world with eagerness. Beside her walked Mina. The transformation was complete, not just because of the floral dress or the shiny patent leather shoes, but because of her posture. She no longer walked, hunched over, expecting a blow or a shout. She walked with her chin held high, holding Kunle's hand, who carried his new sister's backpack with protective pride. Are you sure you paid for everything, Akin? Mama Adura asked for the 10th time, turning her head back. I don't want a bill to come. Look, I don't even have money for chewing gum. Akin let out a genuine laugh, a sound his office employees wouldn't recognize. It's all paid, Mama Adura, and what isn't, we'll invent. Forget about money. Your only job now is to breathe and put on some weight. You weigh less than a sigh. The valet parking brought the car. It was no longer the 2-seater sports sedan. It was a spacious and safe family SUV. Akin had exchanged his speed toy for a vehicle that could fit everyone. As he helped Mama Adura into the passenger seat with extreme delicacy, Mina paused on the sidewalk. She looked back, towards the city, towards the direction where the dark alley lay. Akin noticed the pause, closed Mama Adura's door, and knelt beside the girl. What are you looking at? He asked softly. Never again, Mina whispered, pointing towards the gray horizon of the poorer neighborhoods. Truly, I will never again have to look for food in the trash. Akin took her hands. He felt the red thread bracelet on the girl's wrist, the infinity knot brushing his fingers. Look at me, Aminat. He waited for her dark eyes to connect with his. Before you go hungry again, I will stop breathing. It's a blood promise. Never again. Mina nodded, and a shy but real smile lit up her face. She got into the car. Kunle jumped in behind her. I call the window, the boy shouted. No, I do, Mina replied, laughing. It was the sound of recovered childhood. Akin closed the door, took a deep breath of the city air, and got behind the wheel. He wasn't going to a meeting. He was going home. Scene 2. Justice in aisle 4. But before going to the mansion, Akin had a pending stop. Where are we going, Papa? Kunle asked, seeing Akin take the turnoff towards the shopping mall. The house is the other way. We have an important purchase to make, son. Akin said with a determined look in the rearview mirror. Something we left unfinished. The SUV stopped in front of the same supermarket where everything had begun. The neon sign flickered under the sun. Mina tensed in the back seat. The memory of the humiliation from the screaming cashier was still fresh. "Don't be afraid," Akin said, turning off the engine. "This time it's different. Let's go." They all got out. Akin pushed Mama Adura's wheelchair. They entered through the automatic doors. The air conditioning, the smell of the bakery, the hum of the checkouts. The stage was the same, but the actors had changed roles. Akin walked directly to the dairy aisle. His leather shoes resonated with authority. People moved aside, not out of disgust this time, but because of the magnetic presence emanating from the group. They reached the shelf. Akin took not one, but 10 tins of the most expensive baby formula, the same one Mina had tried to buy. He filled the cart with food, chocolates, fruits, toys, everything a child would dream of. Then he headed to the checkouts. He scanned the area. There was the same cashier. The woman with the sour face was still chewing gum and scanning products with disdain. Akin joined her queue. Kunle and Mina clung to his legs. Mama Adura watched in silence, understanding what Akin was doing. When it was his turn, Akin began to place the tins on the belt. The cashier looked up, bored. "Do you have a loyalty card?" she asked mechanically. Then she stopped, looked at Mina, recognized the eyes, looked at Akin, recognized the man in the suit, although he was now wearing jeans and a polo shirt, and looked at the old woman in the wheelchair. The color drained from the woman's face. The chewing gum stopped in her mouth. "You," she stammered. "Good afternoon," Akin said with glacial courtesy. "I've come to pay a debt." The cashier swallowed hard, looking around, searching for security, searching for an escape. "Sir, I was just doing my job. The rules say that." "I'm not here to complain about your rules," Akin interrupted. He took out his platinum card, the same one that had shone that day. "I've come to complete the transaction," you interrupted. "Charge everything." The trembling woman scanned the products. The beep, beep of the machine sounded like a countdown. It's N300, she said in a weak voice. Akin paid, but didn't move. He turned to the long line of people waiting behind him. Hard-working people, mothers with children, elders counting coins. "Listen, everyone," Akin raised his voice. The supermarket fell silent. 3 weeks ago, at this very checkout, a little girl cried from hunger, and no one did anything. I did nothing. We all looked away. Akin looked at the cashier who wanted to sink beneath the counter. Poverty is not a crime, and indifference is the worst disease. Today I want to celebrate that my family is alive. Akin looked at the manager who had come out of his office to see the commotion. "Manager," Akin called. "Close the checkouts." "Excuse me?" the man in the cheap tie asked, stammering. "I said close the checkouts. Everyone in this supermarket right now, their bill, I'll pay it." A murmur of disbelief ran through the place. "Everyone?" asked a woman with a cart full of diapers. "Everyone," Akin affirmed, with one condition. He turned to the cashier, "That the next time someone can't pay for a child's milk, you remember this moment and remember that dignity has no price." The cashier bowed her head, utterly ashamed. Tears of humiliation welled in her eyes. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." Mina, letting go of Akin's leg, approached the counter. She took one of the chocolate bars Akin had bought, extended it to the cashier. "Here," the girl said with disarming innocence. "It looks like you're sad. My Mama Adura says chocolate cures sadness." The girl's gesture was the final blow. The cashier burst into tears, covering her face with her hands. The manager, red with embarrassment, nodded at Akin. The people in the queue began to applaud. It wasn't a movie applause. It was a spontaneous, human applause. Akin didn't smile arrogantly. He just took the handle of Mama Adura's wheelchair. "Let's go home," he said. Scene 3. The warmth of home. Epilogue. 1 year later, the garden of the Akinvale estate was unrecognizable. Where there had once been meticulously cut lawns and cold marble statues that no one looked at, there was now a chaos of life. There was a poorly placed football goal, bicycles thrown on the grass, and a long wooden table under the shade of a century-old oak tree. It was Sunday. The air smelled of barbecue and laughter. Akin was in front of the grill with an apron that said, "The boss stained with sauce." He no longer wore a watch. His wrist was adorned by only one thing, a red thread bracelet worn with use, with an infinity knot. "Papa, Mina fouled me," Kunle shouted. running across the lawn, his face red with effort. He had grown. He was stronger, happier. Liar. Mina ran behind him, laughing heartily. Her hair, once dull and matted, now shone under the sun, long and well cared for, tied with a red ribbon. She tripped over her own feet. "Referee!" Aiken shouted, raising a spatula. "Play fair, or you'll lose your hamburgers." At the table in the shade, Mama Adura sat like a queen. She had regained weight. Her wrinkles were still there, but they were no longer furrows of suffering, but maps of a life that had found safe harbor. She was weaving. Her hands, though slower, had not lost their magic. "Stop scolding them, Akin," she said, smiling. "Let them run. Children need to wear out their shoe soles. That's what they're for." Akin approached the table and poured her a glass of fresh lemonade. He kissed her on the forehead. "Are you well, Mama?" he asked. "I'm better than ever, son." Mama Adura put her needles on the table. "You know, I was thinking." Akin became serious for a moment. The memory always hurt a little, like an old scar. "I also think about that sometimes. How close I was to losing everything. To losing you. To losing myself." Mama Adura took Akin's hand, caressing the red bracelet on his wrist. "But you didn't lose us, because the thread stretches. It gets tangled, but it never breaks." Mama Adura looked towards the garden where Kunle and Mina rolled on the grass, laughing hysterically. "Look at that, Akin. That's what you built. Not your company's building, nor your bank accounts. That." Akin looked at the children. Mina, the girl who had been invisible to the world, now shone with her own light. She went to school, got the best grades in mathematics, and, according to teachers, had a gift for leadership. Kunle, who had been destined to be a rich and lonely child, now had a compassionate heart and a sister he would die for. "I know," Akin said, his throat tight. "I am the richest man in the world, and it has nothing to do with the bank." The doorbell of the main gate rang. The butler, who now smiled much more often, appeared in the garden. "Chief Akinwale, the guests for the charity gala have arrived." Akin nodded. He took off his apron. That night they were inaugurating the Mama Adura Mendoza Foundation, a comprehensive reception center for homeless families. It wasn't a cold orphanage. It was a home, a place where no one would have to return milk. "Let's go," Akin said. "Wait," Mina said, running up, gasping. "Papa, your shoelace is untied. You can't go out like that to give your speech." The girl knelt on the grass, not caring about staining her new dress, and skillfully tied Akin's laces. Akin looked down at her. He saw the top of her head. He remembered the day in the supermarket when he looked at her with contempt from his height. Now he looked at her with absolute devotion. Mina stood up and brushed her hands. "Done. Now you look like a president." Akin knelt and hugged her. It was a long, strong hug. "Thank you, daughter. For tying your shoe?" she asked, surprised. "For saving my life," he whispered in her ear. Akin stood up, took Kunle's hand and Mina's hand. Mama Adura moved forward with her walker. She hardly used the chair anymore. Together they walked towards the house. The camera slowly pulls back, rising towards the blue sky, revealing the garden full of life. The image fades to black, but before disappearing, a final close-up appears. Akin's wrist holding Mina's hand. The red thread gleams under the sun. The infinity knot is firm. No one is so poor that they cannot give a hug, nor so rich that they do not need one.